Welcome, Pat. We're absolutely delighted to have you in the podcast studio today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks very much, Cliona, and Nick, delighted to be here.
You're very, very welcome. So can you just firstly start by kind of telling us a little bit of your backstory and just introducing yourself?
Sure. So I grew up in Patrickswell, which is the home of hurling, which I know that Nick is extremely interested in, but unfortunately lives in Cork, which is one of the weaker counties.
Oh, God, I don't know about that, Pat.
So I had to mention that to get it over with. I grew up in a family business, studied engineering, got a job in Cork with Motorola, worked there for 17 years, learned a huge amount there. Motorola shut down in Cork in 2007, so we were all made redundant at that point. Interestingly, Motorola Solutions is just reopening again in Cork now
Really?
this month. Yeah, so after a break of 17 years. 17 years now, so it's interesting to see they're coming back again. And at that point, I had to decide what to do next, whether I would stick my name into other multinationals or try something myself. So after a bit of deliberation and after finding the CV I had submitted in 1990 to Motorola, found it in my drawer when I was cleaning out my drawer. And in that, I had a statement at the bottom saying, someday I'd like to set up my own business. Mm. And apart from being amazed that I would put that on a CV, because that seems like a weird thing to do, it reminded me of those aspirations, which had been completely buried for the last number of years. I was very much engaged with my projects with Motorola and working long hours and very focused on that. So I reached a stage, I think I was 40 then. And I said, well, if I, go get another job with another multinational, I'll probably be there till I'm past it. So now is the time to take a shot, take a chance. And one of my colleagues in Motorola, Colin Horgan, felt the same way. So the two of us decided we'd set up our own business. So we set up Aspira back then, 2007.
Well, the fact that you actually put it down in your CV back in the 90s obviously alludes to the fact that you had a very entrepreneurial spirit. But, I suppose in the face of adversity, being faced with a redundancy is difficult. And you obviously went from being a PAYE worker to becoming a business owner. How did you manage that transition and what challenges did you face?
Yeah, it was a big transition. I don't think I had submitted a tax return in 20 years or something, and suddenly I was now classified as Class S for paying taxes. I was disgusted to realise I lost all my PRSI payments and had to pay for my visits to the dentist, despite paying taxes all those years. It's a different mindset. Mm-hmm. And I remember we started with 6 people, 4 of my colleagues in Motorola. We hired them from day one. And after a few weeks, one of the guys turned around and said, "Oh, we've run out of paper in the printer. Who orders that?" And I looked around and realised it was me. So there was nobody other than me to do it. So while the title of CEO may have been fancy, the reality was anything but. You really have to do everything. Yeah. And it brought me right back to my family days, because I grew up in a family business with a shop, a petrol station, restaurant. And that's where I got the work ethic from, and the roll up your sleeves and do whatever. So I found, even though I had forgotten a lot of that, it came back to me, dealing with vendors, dealing with banks, dealing with customers. And the entrepreneurial ethos I grew up with there came to the fore, and that coupled with the business and commercial knowledge I learned in my time in Motorola actually was very useful. So both aspects were important.
I think having the corporate background is a great start for anybody that, goes out on business on their own. But I suppose I worked in the corporate world myself for a long time. And I know, Pat, you talk a lot about kind of agility as kind of a term in terms of teams and managing teams. When I worked in Boring or Ingelheim, the core values were agility, accountability and entrepreneurship. Can you talk to me a little bit about, what an agile team looks like and what an agile person kind of looks like in terms of core values?
Okay, so agile is a subject I could talk for quite a while on, so I'll try to keep it brief. In the world of project management, agile is an approach that you take. So because of the name, people think it means you can do whatever you want, but it doesn't, right? Mm-hmm. So there's disciplined agile. There's a set of guidelines and a framework for how you approach a delivery of projects and business. So the basic idea is, the joke, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And with Agile, instead of trying to take on the whole project, the whole piece of work, you break it down into a series of small tasks. And then you focus on delivering for the next 3 weeks. What are we going to deliver? Let's deliver something useful together for the next 3 weeks. And you have a daily meeting, a daily stand-up meeting where the team basically checks in with each other and says, what is each person going to do today? What did we get done yesterday? And have we run into any obstacles? And if there are obstacles, then the team helps, say, what's the problem? How can I help you? So that's a core part of Agile, that flexible and informal structure where the team help each other with shared ownership. Another one is called Kanban, which is a Japanese term. And it basically means when you have a series of tasks to do, you can take Post-it notes and put them on one side of your whiteboard, and you might have your process broken out into 4 or 5 steps. And as those tasks are getting done, you move them along. Every day you can look and see, it gives you a visual representation of progress, but it also highlights if there's too much going on, because you can only juggle a certain number of balls at the same time without dropping them. So it lets you see how much bandwidth people may have, but also highlights bottlenecks. If there's a particular stage in the process where everything is getting to but not getting past, that indicates you've got a problem. And you can, it's a visual way of spotting that problem. I would say the third thing about Agile that's very useful both for projects and for business is the idea of the retrospective, which is every 3 or 4 weeks the team gets together, it might be half an hour, 40 minutes, and identifies one thing it can do better. So rather than waiting and writing a big report on all the things that should be done differently, you just pick one thing. And it might be a tweak to your process, it might be using a different tool or technology, it might be getting a more comfortable chair, right? It can be any change that the team believes will make the work and life better, and they implement that change. So over time, that can be very powerful. It's a continuous improvement mindset that people have.
What's really interesting, Pat, is that I've listened to you speak before, and I would refer to maybe what you did previously as more in that sort of project management space. But as a business owner myself, and clean myself, have a business, we've been running for 10 years now. I've tried to implement some of the things that you've spoken about, in terms of, the process, the Kanban, for example. It's the first time I've heard that phrase, even though we run a sort of a similar process. We have a spreadsheet of, prospects that we're dealing with, and then we bring them further into those that, are commit to, a particular kind of area of financial advice. And then we're finding that sometimes there are these bottlenecks, but I didn't understand it in the way that you phrased it. And even these kind of sprint meetings, as you've mentioned, doing them more regularly rather than sort of once a week or once a month, which is what we typically would used to do in the past. And I'm finding that that is actually helping even a small business like our own. And it's interesting to see that there is that. One of the things that I'm really interested, Pat, and again, as what I refer to as a small to medium-sized business, your company grew significantly. I remember reading somewhere that you were one of the 50 biggest growth companies in Europe. I don't know if you
we were in the top 500 in Europe. 500. Yeah. It might make 50.
I think it was quickest growth, though. It was the quickest growth. I actually read a statement. I think you may be underselling yourself. How is there any little bit of advice you could give to business owners like us around what brought you from that you started, you could see that obviously there was progress to what it eventually became? Because, I mean, Pat, for those people that are not aware, you built a considerable business, particularly in what was historically Cork. I know it grew, and interestingly, during COVID period where you expanded into other countries, I think.
United Arab UAE.
That's right, yeah. So we set up first in the Netherlands, and then the United Arab Emirates, and then Portugal. And we did work in, I think it was over 30 different countries.
Incredible.
So yeah, it was a great experience.
Yeah, so I found it difficult even dealing with the challenges of, people working remotely. I mean, I can only imagine dealing with people in different jurisdictions, different languages. I mean, how did you cope with that, Pat? And what advice would you give to business owners like us?
Okay, so I would say there's 3 different elements you have to think about. There's the people, there's the process, and there's the technology. So I'll deal them in reverse order. With technology, we decided early on that all our business systems would be cloud-based. So rather than having, systems sitting on a server in the office, and then having to replicate that server every time we opened a new office, we had everything in the cloud. So it meant that when we did open in the Netherlands or UAE, we were still able to use the same systems we had, one system for everybody, one login for everybody. So that just made life easier all around. On process, as we grew, we had to, we couldn't rely on the way we used to do things in Motorola, which was, when we started off with 6 people, we could just keep going the way we had. So we had to formalize our processes and document them and train people up on them to make sure there was a consistent approach. You do hit certain inflection points as you grow, and you have to recognize that, a team of 50 is going to work differently than a team of 5. And likewise, a team of 150 is another inflection point, where you have to put more formal structures in place. And that's where the people come in. So you have to make sure you really focus on sharing the values and driving the culture of the organization across the people, and you put a structure in place. So, towards the end of my time with Aspira, I stepped back from being the CEO. We promoted from within the team. We had a new CEO, new CXO, all the roles in the exec were being filled by staff members who had come up through the ranks. So you've got to really give people those opportunities. Let's understand what their career goals are, and then look for opportunities to give them experiences and training and work so that they can, learn and reach their potential. So I guess those 3 things, right? People, process, and technology. And it really helps if you have an idea in advance, if you're looking ahead to see where you want to get to in the next 3 years, and then you put the foundation in place now, rather than wait till you bang into the challenge, and then you're on the back foot. So we always tried to be a little bit proactive. We had a 3-year plan, tried to envisage what the business might look like in 3 years, and then put the people in the roles and make sure we had everything set up so that we could operate. But it requires investment. You're continually reinvesting in the business for growth.
And can I ask you, Pat, just again looking back, did you have any sense of what you would have achieved and the business growth? I mean, if I was to ask Pat back in 2007 and sitting down today that you've created, I know with other people, but this monumental business, and, would that have even been in your expectations, or were you very driven from the get-go?
Yeah, no, I would have said very driven. So from day one, we said our goal was global domination.
Okay.
So
you aimed high.
Absolutely, yeah. We said global domination. And that was something that I shared with all my team, and I know they would probably throw their eyes up to heaven. But you're very much dependent on the team. So, I don't think I would have dominated a single room by myself. It was the fact that we, brought in such great people, and they were committed to the efforts as well. And many of the team continued to be committed to the effort and continue to drive the company very successfully now. But yeah, we always had the ambition. So never short for ambition. I guess if I was to give myself from 17 years ago advice now, I would say that what I should have done that I didn't was focus more on building the sales part of the business. Very much engineering focused. Mm-hmm. Took the naive view that we'll build something great and then people will come knocking on our door. And that's fine for a while when you're at a certain size and you know enough people that you can sell to them. But to achieve global domination, you need to have a well-defined sales process. Mm-hmm. You need to have people who understand what you're selling, understand the pros and cons, and won't missell. So we're very keen that we never try to overpromise or give customer more than they need, but instead we take the time to understand what their challenge was and then craft a solution for them. So you can't expect to go out and hire a sales team who will automatically know all that stuff. So you have to invest time and build the artifacts to help them support. We realised that, but it took us probably 10 years to realise it,
You learn as you go as well. I mean, as a business owner, let's say, you wear different hats. So, I mean, when we're talking, obviously, the podcast is beyond money. From a money kind of management side in the business, how did you manage that kind of transition from, you're working in Motorola, where, as you said, paychecks are coming through, but it's a totally different kind of environment when you become a business owner and you're managing all these different hats. So any kind of insight into that side?
Having a supportive spouse is a key part of it.
Yeah.
Because when decided to do this, like I had 2 young children, we had a family to support, so it wasn't an option to live off air. We had to make sure we're still being successful. So having support from your family is absolutely critical. That's one step. I guess another one is cutting your cloth according to your measure. You need to make sure, if you're used to exotic holidays 5 times a year, well, that's not going to happen. So you have to be pragmatic and make sure you're willing to make whatever sacrifices are required at the start. On the actual running of the finance side of it, neither Colm nor I were accountants, right?
Yeah.
So we were both engineers. We literally tossed a coin to see who would be responsible for the finance function, and I lost. So I was responsible for the finance function. No, I wasn't happy. But I'm a numbers guy, so once I could remember which ones the creditors were and which ones the debtors were,
it was a good start.
I was able to, I have to keep reminding myself which one. I find it easier to say who owes me money and who do I owe money to. That rings more true with me. So there was a transition there, just to be responsible for running it and running it sensibly and credibly. So we would be, while we would be risk takers in terms of new products and technology, financially very conservative, don't want to owe people money, don't want to get in trouble with the tax man, any of that stuff. So always very, very prudent in our approach of the finances.
And I suppose we've been dealing with a lot of people who've been going through redundancies in the tech sector. What advice would you give to somebody that is in a position now maybe that you faced all those years ago?
What I would say is to take a breath anyway, not to panic, not to rush at the first opportunity that may come along. I think when you talk to people at any stage of their life and you ask them if they had a plan that got them from finishing school to where they are now, and if you think about that yourself, none of us had that plan. We all end up having to be agile and respond to events that happen. So I think I don't encourage everybody to go and set up their own business. It isn't for everybody, right? So depending on your circumstances, it might be a good move. I would certainly encourage people to consider it and see if it fits with them. But I think too often people with a harebrained idea and no resilience are still encouraged to do it just because, we like to say, give it a shot, you never know. So I rather take a bet if I think there's a good chance of success. Yeah. And I regularly chat to people and give them very direct feedback on their ideas, both positive and negative. Because I found I valued straight feedback much more. Then there's a lot of people will just pat you on the back. I found it much more useful when I got people highlighting the weaknesses in my business plan or the weaknesses in my product portfolio, because then you can do something about it.
It allows you to move forward, yeah.
It's really good advice. And Pat, what does life look like for you now? I know we've kind of been talking, just in terms of even today, but what is Pat Lucey doing now?
So at the moment, it's 2 years since we finished up and sold Aspira. Now I spend most of my time on boards as a board director. So I'm spending a lot of time with the Project Management Institute, which I really enjoy. So I was lucky enough to be elected onto the global board there. It's quite time consuming, but it's an area that I'm very passionate about, and we get to really make a difference in and elevate our world through helping more projects be successful. And I'm also sitting on advisory boards of some local businesses here in Cork, which I enjoy. I don't know if they enjoy me, but I enjoy being involved and trying to make a difference. And I've learned so much in different areas. So, that's one thing. Every day's a learning day.
I think we'll finish off, Pat, on the hurling front, okay? Give it to me. Who do you think is next up for the title?
Well, I have to congratulate Cork and Clare on their successes this year, getting to the final. I was rooting for Cork in the final this year. Unfortunately, it's going to be Limericks for the next 10 years now. 10 in a row for Limerick. So There you go. That's my
I
tip.
don't know about that. We'll have to wait and see.
Fantastic.
Well,
Okay.
thanks so much, Pat, for joining us today and for taking time to come in.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks very
Thank
much,
you.
Pat.
Thank you.
Enjoyed
Thank
it.
you.